When I was first able to see it with my own eyes and walk up to the edge, and the wind, that hot desert wind, blows across the top of the crater and blasts you in the face, it looks like the kind of spot where Satan himself should jump out with a pitchfork and the whole works.
Located in Turkmenistan's Karakum desert, the Darvaza crater is a massive man-made sinkhole that has been leaking burning methane gas for decades. It has been said it was intentionally set alight by Soviet authorities, hoping it would burn off in a matter of weeks, but no one knows for sure. In 2013, explorer George Kourounis set out on an expedition to study the dynamics inside the crater for National Geographic. However, background information about the crater was hard to find.
One of the most appealing and frustrating things about this crater is that there really isn't a whole lot of information about it. And even while I was in the country, I met with 2 local Turkmen geologists. And it's hard to get the story straight as to exactly what happened. If you go onto the internet and do any kind of research, you'll hear that the crater formed in 1971 and was lit almost immediately by Soviet geologists. Well, the geologists in Turkmenistan, they tell me a different story. They say that the crater actually formed in the late 1960s and was gurgling with gas and mud for quite a few years and wasn't actually ignited until the 1980s.
Well, it's basically really clouded in mystery. And it's also a reflection of how they worked in Soviet times, right? Because it seems that really nobody was interested in making this a big deal. Because at that time, you had to report successes, not failures. So if people on the ground, locals, they did something wrong, nobody was interested in that being reported. It was in a faraway desert. The impact really was minimal.
I tried my best to get any kind of official record or report or any kind of mention on paper of this incident. Nothing.
Another thing is that you have to have in mind, everything related to gas, oil and natural resources during Soviet times was considered strategic and top secret. So even now, if you're doing energy history, as I'm doing, a lot of these documents are simply classified.
And there's even controversy as to whether it was accidentally ignited, perhaps by a lightning strike or something, or was lit on fire intentionally.
One theory is the Soviets used a technique known as flaring, a common practice in natural gas extraction in which excess gas is intentionally burned for safety and financial reasons.
Having an uncontrolled release of methane is a really terrible idea. It's just incredibly dangerous because, again, if you're constantly burning it off, then it's not accumulating into, otherwise it could have just every once in a while would have just created a huge explosion.
I'm not sure they gave it a lot of thought at the time because they knew the Soviet Union has a lot of gas. I mean, by the end of the 80s, the Soviet Union was producing 700 billion cubic meters of gas per year. That's a lot of gas. When they were flaring off 15, 16 billion cubic meters of gas per year, this is 4 times as the gas that Switzerland uses every year. But for them, it's nothing. So rather than giving this a lot of thought and trying to use that more rationally or putting gas to pipeline, which requires the building of an infrastructure, they would just burn it. And unfortunately, this problem hasn't been solved until today. Countries like Iraq, Iran, the US, they're flaring off a lot of gas.
From a environmental perspective, even though it's terrible, look, the thing is terrible. It's an uncontrolled release of greenhouse gas into the atmosphere. But that being said, it's much better to release carbon dioxide rather than methane into the atmosphere.
Turkmen authorities had discussed extinguishing the crater. However, they changed their minds and now use it to promote tourism. While Turkmenistan only sees 6,000 tourists per year, the crater's murky history and mesmerizing glow keep it a draw for adventurers like George.
Standing at the bottom of that crater, in my protective heat suit, feeling very much like an astronaut, surrounded by what I call a coliseum of fire. It's probably the closest experience that a human being can have to stepping on another world, but yet here on Earth.